Now, there are two things you need to know about bass sound. Bass sound has two important characteristics, one of which is it carries vast distances. The long, slow, big wavelengths fill the valleys. So that, because there are very few kakapo left, so you've got some are going to sort of reach the female kakapo who may be out there. But if there are any female kakapo out there, and if they like the sound of this booming, which they probably don't, we then reach a problem caused by the second characteristic of bass sound, which is, well, let me see if I can illustrate this. Do you know there's a particular kind of stereo speakers you can get, where you have two tiny little speakers that you have to place very carefully in the room because they're carrying all the treble information and they give you your stereo image. And then you have some big bass box called a woofer that you can put anywhere in the room you like. You can put it behind the sofa if you like, because the second characteristic of bass sound, and remember this is the mating call of the male kakapo we're talking about, is that you can't tell where it's coming from. So just imagine, supposing there are some female kakapos out there, which there probably aren't, and supposing they like the sound of this booming, which they probably don't, supposing that they can then find where it's coming from, which they probably can't, if they overcome all those obstacles and actually find the male kakapo, the female kakapo will then only consent to mate if the podocarp tree is in fruit. Now, we've all had relationships like that. Supposing they got through all these obstacles and actually succeed in mating, the female kakapo will then lay one single egg every 2 years, which promptly gets eaten by a stoat or a rat. And you think, how the hell has this stupid creature lasted this long? I mean, let alone the other problems it's now got. How the hell has it lasted this long if it reproduces in this stupid way? And the answer is a very interesting one, which is, it survived this long precisely because of that strategy. Now that seems peculiar to us. That seems very, very odd to us. The reason it seems odd to us is because we grew up, and I'm talking about growing up in evolutionary terms, we evolved in a world which was full of predators, and the kakapo didn't. Now, if you reproduce too fast within any given environmental set of circumstances, then you can easily outstrip your environment's ability to sustain your population at any given level, and your population can plummet because it's got too big too quickly. And if you're living in a world where you're not being culled by anything, in which there's no predator coming along to eat you, then your reproductive rate, if it's going to be successful, is going to be much, much slower. So, making such a song and dance out of their reproductive techniques is exactly what enabled them to reach a good, stable situation, the population, until the point in which human beings came along and mucked it all up. Now, because we come carrying our own mindset, our own idea of what the world looks like, our own idea of how the world works, we look at this animal and think it's stupid. Why is it doing this stupid stuff when it's not helping it any, when it's actually being counterproductive in terms of how it's living its life? But you see, the thing is that because the kakapo evolved that way, it's the only way it knows how to behave. To do anything else, to revise its reproductive strategy, would be against kakapo nature. It'd be a kind of in Kakapos thing to do. But meanwhile, of course, the monkeys, or the monkeys' descendants, i.e. us, we have evolved our own strategy, which has been very, very successful up to this point, which is taking the world for all it's got, competing like crazy with each other, and we have thereby become extremely successful and have thrived on this planet and filled it. But as a result of that happening, the nature of the world we live in has now changed, just as the nature of the world that the Kakapos lives in has now changed. And whereas the Kakapos, if I can be naughty and anthropomorphize again, finding itself in this desperate situation of its population just plummeting, is thinking, well, what do we do well? We reproduce very slowly, so let's give that a try. And of course, the population plummets still further. So they think, well, let's reproduce really slowly, and you see the problem. But in the end, you see, we are doing precisely the same thing, because the things that have been good strategies for us, which is taking whatever we need from the planet without any thought for what the consequences of that might be, because when that strategy evolved, the world compared to the size of the world and the size of the world's resources compared to the size of our population meant that the world was indistinguishable from being infinitely big. But it isn't anymore, but we continue to carry out the same strategies, because to do anything else would be against human nature, would be an inhuman thing to do. So it seems to me that we get fantastically useful and helpful sort of parables from looking at the animal world to seeing something, to understanding the way in which we work on this planet. Now,